We're going to continue discussing cannabis with a fireside chat, and this one is called Understanding the Emerging Cannabis Industry from Medical to Recreational Usage. So we're very happy to have with us today our panelists. Please, a round of applause for the president at Company X, Mr. Clint Younge. And back with us is CMO and Managing Director at Highland Network, Chokwan Chopaka, who will be our moderator for this fireside chat. A round of applause, please, for our fireside chat guests.
Okay, I'm back. So let me first introduce you to Clint Younge from Company X, and I think he's probably best at doing the introduction than myself.
Thank you, Kitty, and thank you very much to everyone in Thailand for welcoming this topic and welcoming me to come and speak on behalf of the emerging cannabis market and the different markets that I've seen over the world in the last 12 years that I've been in cannabis. I am the president of Company X, which is an industrial hemp company built out of Switzerland. I am the former CEO of MMJ Canada, which was an unregulated dispensary chain that fought for legalization and fought for medicinal patient access in Canada for about 10 years. And I was also on the board for CAMCD, which was the Canadian Association of Medical Cannabis Dispensaries. I am also the co-founder of the LOST organization, which is a mental health organization that stands for Living Outside of Suffering and Trauma. I vertically integrated mental health with cannabis because it was a stigma in Canada for a very long time that nobody wanted to speak about. People were terrified to speak about cannabis and mental health all in one sitting because they believed that cannabis was actually a harm to people with mental health, when actually if you microdose and use the right strains and use non-psychoactive components of cannabis, it's actually an amazing harm reduction for people who suffer like myself with PTSD, depression, anxiety, all the way up through to, suicidal tendencies and schizophrenia.
Okay, so I would say that we're probably not going to talk about the benefits of cannabis because you guys can go and do your homework yourself. But I think the really things that we need to focus on right now is what is the current status of the market and of regulation, let's say Canada right now.
Okay, so in Canada, most of you probably wouldn't understand or know, but last year, October 17th, cannabis became legal Canada-wide for recreational consumption. The bill was put forward in 2016 by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It took a little longer than expected to get the recreational market going. But before that, it started out as medicine. 2001, the very first grow license was given to a patient with cancer to grow their own medicine. And that's where the industry started. So like Thailand, which I find very interesting, Canada started from a medicinal point of view, which I believe it should always be done because of the amount of wellness and the amount of benefits on multiple illnesses that cannabis can do for you. I believe that's where most countries should be starting off at. It took about 8 to 10 years to get to recreational. I believe that other countries now have a platform to be using, especially from Canada and other parts of Europe, to make this process a little faster, say in countries like Thailand. I don't think it needs to take 9 years. I think now that there's a lot of research, a lot of development that's been done on not only behalf of Canada, but on behalf of places like Israel, Germany, Switzerland, even down into Spain and into the Americas. The statistics are speaking for itself on cannabis becoming a harm reduction. And I believe that, with Canada anyways, the issue with it being completely recreationalized now is that the patients have kind of went into the background. I have no issue, period, with recreational cannabis use. I think that, in moderation, cannabis is probably the least harmful alternative, more so than cigarettes, more so than coffee, more so than alcohol. And actually, those are all proven in statistic forms as well. But when the patient goes without, due to recreational users, that's where I become quite offended by the scenario. There needs to be a balance of both. I love the fact that Kitty and what they're doing in Highland represents and starts with medicinal, but also the fact of fear of just consuming and possessing cannabis on a recreational level needs to be dealt with as well. And I guess I'm hoping that, with people like Kitty in Highland doing their job as well as they do, I hope that Thailand realizes that if and when the time does come, that both aspects need to be looked at and never forgotten, regardless of if recreational comes about or not.
But that's the thing, though. Everywhere, like say Canada, certain states in America, Europe, and Australia as well, even though when they legalize medical cannabis, they also decriminalize. But that's not the thing for Thailand, though.
Yeah.
We literally jumped over decriminalization. So, FYI, cannabis in your system will actually land you 1 year in jail and 20,000 baht in fine in Thailand. It doesn't matter where you use it, whether you use it in a legal country or not. If it's still in your system, you're screwed. And unfortunately, this is what is being prosecuted every day for just simple user.
And that's something that Kitty and I actually spoke about yesterday in the Canadian market. Even when Canada was illegal, they deemed medicinal cannabis dispensaries, although they were illegal up until 2017, they operated peacefully for almost 9 to 10 years, and they were even given temp permits by the government, which allowed these places to operate and kind of try to prove themselves that cannabis was a medicine and that patients did need access at a fair level. And it was done quite more peacefully. When Kitty told me that the fact that you could be pulled over and have anything in your system and you could potentially face up to a year in jail with a 20,000 baht fine is concerning. And it's concerning to me because cannabis is a plant. I look at cannabis now like vitamin B or echinacea or any other wellness product. Nobody should be incarcerated for self-consumption, especially when it's helping them. There's a lot of people that are scared to talk about what they suffer with, whether it's mental health or whether it's that they have cancer, HIV, and the list go on and on. The fact is that as a human, we should have the right to consume what we believe is the medicine that works for our body the most. And the day that gets told that we can't do, I think that all of us should have our ears raised, and awareness needs to be, and education needs to be put out into the universe and into public formats like this, so then the understanding of cannabis is less demonized, and we break the stigma on doing that. So.
Okay, so what about, we talk about regulation, what about the money value of the existing market right now?
Okay, so this is, we talked about this last night as well again. By 2021, Canada's recreational market is supposed to be $30 to $35 billion a year. Now, this is a country that has major blocks into the regulation of legalization of cannabis. You cannot import any cannabis into Canada. They do not want to do that. They want to export it only and grow it themselves because we have so much land mass, and keep it within Canada to make it strong. So if they can project a number like $30 to $35 billion a year by 2021 in a country that only has 35 million people, what are the potentials for Thailand? 90 million people in Thailand alone, with Southeast Asian countries all around it. This could be the forefront, if not the biggest market in the free world. By 2021, with 90 million people in your country, if it's regulated properly through the government and things are done right, I could see this industry easily being a $200-300 billion industry by 2025. The sky is the limit when it comes to cannabis, because not only in cannabis, I think what people think when they first hear cannabis is that we're stoners and we're lazy. The fact of the matter is there's non-psychoactive components that don't get you high in cannabis, like hemp. Hemp can be used for so many different things: renewable energy, replacing fuel, biodegradable products, clothing, rope, so many different things. And I think that it gets pushed to the side because the first time when everything that you hear about cannabis is, you kind of go back to those movies like Dazed and Confused, where they're stoned, smoking joints in a park, and that's it. And that's the stigma behind it. But the fact of the matter is that cannabis serves a purpose on so many different levels, from the wellness of the human body to retail and cosmetic markets, depending on how it's blended into your products, and then also built for, financial sustainability into countries that are looking to become more financially sustainable. And then employment, farmers, people of Thailand, there's so many jobs that can be created, and not just Thailand, all of Southeast Asia. There's so many jobs that can be given back to people that don't have the opportunity to make the money that they are making potentially if cannabis does become regulated.
But I still have this thing about there may be a dollar sign of how big the market is.
Yeah.
But I want to bring it back in terms of the fact that cannabis is fickle. It's not going to deliver you from poverty. It's just one of those things. It's like you really need to learn as much as you can. And globally, it went so far from where we are right now.
Very true.
And bringing back in terms of regulation in Thailand, yes, medical is legal, but technically it's only in theory. So in practice, you can't do anything yet. The guy who came up with the form has yet to write the forms yet. And you know how form is like in Thailand. You literally, everything will come with a bunch of forms just to, get all the licensing out. But at the same time, everything is still kind of very controlled. You're not really going to be able to commercialize it anytime soon. If you're going to do anything, you have to do it with either the government or the university, and then that's also where the risk lies a lot. But at the same time, there is still opportunity for Thailand, but we'll go into that later. So with all the different markets that is existing right now, say Canada, Europe, Australia is still very tiny because technically they just legalized medical. Certain states in America, which kind of end up being that they had an oversupply of goods, which can't go anywhere.
And it's not federally legal.
So what problem do you normally face right now in terms of cannabis?
Now that I'm out of the Canadian space of cannabis, the problems are actually a lot less in Europe. The European Union, and then my company being from Switzerland, who is not a part of the EU, but they are a European country, it has to be CBD, which is the non-psychoactive component of cannabis, cannabidiol. As long as the plant is grown in Switzerland and it's under 1% THC, it can be sold, it could be put in any type of product and distributed anywhere throughout Switzerland and Italy if it's under 1%. And then if it's under 0.3%, it can be distributed anywhere into Europe, minus the UK, which is they're still kind of evolving and getting through the red tape. In Canada, there's a lot of issues. The way they regulated, they blocked out organic farmers, they blocked out the craft market, they blocked out all the pioneers. So all the experts and people like Kitty who fought for regulations and fought for people's freedoms and rights for wellness and medicinal patients, once they regulated, the government took control, power corporations came in, and the pioneers were shot out of the industry, essentially. I'm hoping to see someone like Kitty who, for one, I don't know if everybody in this room understands, but the oppression of women in cannabis is at its highest in Canada and in Europe. There's not very many power females in cannabis. There's not many CEOs in cannabis that are females. There's not many females that are on even boards of board of directors in cannabis companies. To come here when I came here and to meet Kitty, it was a breath of fresh air to see a female on the forefront of this industry, because I think that it needs to be recognized that the females, when it comes to the cannabis plant and every aspect of the industry, they bring a lot to the table. And I think that the more we embrace the female gender inside the cannabis space, the more successful the cannabis plant which is female, by the way,
Yeah.
will be a lot more successful in the long-term run. So.
I feel that another set of problem, apart from just the black market itself, is actually regulation. Like over-regulated cannabis industry, that's actually kind of what stems in terms of black market.
Yes.
Because it's too hard, too difficult. Some of the rules are ridiculous. So that people just go back to the black market where they can get it cheaper, where they know the growers, and where there's actually more flavor and taste.
Yes, into the products, yes. So yeah, in Canada, they over-regulated so badly, unfortunately, and I hate saying this about my home country, but I want to hit you guys with truth. I don't want to lie about anything. They over-regulated so bad that only 20% of the regulated stores and the regulated growers in Canada are being used, and 80% of consumers, after attempting to use the legalized market, went directly back to the black market, and the black market now is booming more than it has ever boomed in Canada in the last 20 years. That should be something that everyone is paying attention to in this room, whether you're from Thailand, Korea, China, Japan. It means that if you over-regulate and you don't make the regulations fair, you're essentially just going to push it back to where it began, and all the hard work that every single person does to make it to where it is today goes to absolutely nothing. Fair regulations will keep people buying from the regulated market. It'll inspire people to want to support the movement. Once an unfair regulation hits and a grasp gets taken over your industry, when somebody is told that they can't do something, people tend to push back a little more. I think that you need to eliminate the taboo, and it starts with fair regulations. So.
Over-taxation also is a problem in California as well. People
Yes,
go into the
yes.
black market because who's going to pay like $20 a gram where they can get what?
$7 a gram in the
Yeah.
black market.
Yeah,
So
from the dude next door.
from Mike in apartment B.
Yes, Mike in apartment B. So what about quality? I feel that over-regulation can also diminish quality.
Yes. In Canada, the regulations that were set by Health Canada were so stern that the growers that were entitled to these licenses and spent absurd amount of money to go through the rigmarole of the system of Health Canada to get these grow operations going. In Canada, they're called licensed producers. They ended up being so over-regulated by the quality control through Health Canada that it eliminated a lot of the flavor of the products. Sometimes products would have to sit in the facilities for 2 months before they could be handed to patients, which now when a product sits for 2 months, you're losing terpene profiles. Terpenes are the 5 major components that create the high and the stickiness and the flavor inside of the cannabis, whether it's hemp and or THC cannabis. Once that's removed, you're simply drying it out, and then the levels of THC, CBD, CBG, and all the cannabinoids that are important to the human body, once they go stale, after sitting for a while, levels drop. So when you're getting a product out of the regulated storefronts and you see 17% THC with 2.3% CBD, well, that might have been the case when they tested it, but after it sat for 2.5 months in a cold storage and then put into these jars, which sit on a shelf for sometimes maybe a month, the quality isn't going to be what you originally invested in and thought you were receiving when you purchased it. So over-regulations and quality has become a drastic issue in Canada. In Switzerland with my company now, the regulations are so minor, and the Swiss government has been so wonderful to work with, and their ears are always open, whether it's on research and development, on quality control, and also fair regulations, that you can keep all the aspects of your quality at the highest standard. And I've noticed that in Switzerland, that not only is the quality of cannabis going to be in Europe higher than Canada, but the ability to import and export into multiple different countries that has a market of 750 million people compared to Canada's 35, Canada is going to fall to the wayside very, very quickly as the leaders of the cannabis industry. Places like Europe will take over, and if smart, and regulated right and fairly, Asia will be the biggest market in the world, hands down, especially if import and export are allowed and it's done right. So,
Don't forget Australia. They have a lot of land mass.
well, they're a part of Asia now.
Yeah, true. Okay, so technically, like this whole industry, just like any other industry, we're hit with constant problem, like the whole regulation. But then at the same time, what about the whole community aspect of it? Because I feel that for cannabis to be legalized and done properly, it needs to be fair on all aspects,
Yes.
meaning from the government, from businesses, as well as the public. So what was the community a part of when regulation were made, like say back home in Canada or in Switzerland, in Europe?
Yeah.
And how is that done?
So in Switzerland, they made CBD, which again is the non-psychoactive component of the cannabis plant. They treated it as not like medicine, where CBD in Canada is strictly medicine. They looked at it as a cosmetic and a retail product. It simply is, as long as it can go into creams, bath bombs, eye serums, you're allowed to do whatever you want with CBD, extract it and put it into products, which is really neat. Now the government, they do have lobbying associations in Switzerland. My partner, Tobias Jenny, runs the Medicinal Cannabis Access Association of Switzerland. So they work directly with the state and the 7 councillors of Switzerland, and they educate them on all aspects of the plant. We were the first people to do THC testing in Switzerland, and it's only for research and development. The plant needs to be grown. We have to do research on it, and then we destroy it. In Canada, for 9 years, I watched about 50 different associations lobby the government. I spoke and lobbied in Canada, if nobody understands really Canada on how it works on a system of the way we're built, there's municipalities, cities, provincials, which is provinces, which, you know, if you're from the States or anyone knows the States, it's like a state, and then there's the federal level. I lobbied on every level from municipality to provincial and to federal. I spoke in the House of Commons, I spoke on so many different platforms. For 3 years I educated the government, and at the very end of the day they did what they wanted and eliminated everyone out of the industry and did it their way. In Canada, in the first year alone, the companies that are in the legal market have already lost $100 million. So there's clearly an issue with the regulations in Canada, and to me, I wanted to come to Thailand, I wanted to come to undeveloped markets, because I'm hearing things like, oh, we can look at Canada and adopt that model. Don't adopt the Canadian model, please. I love my country very, very much, but do not adopt the model. There was a lot of mistakes, hence why I'm sitting in Thailand speaking and not sitting in my own country and educating people anymore. It fell on deaf ears, and it just became annoying after a certain time. There's a reason why I'm now working in Switzerland. There's a lot more fair regulated countries that are looking at it from a different point of view that I think Thailand and Southeast Asian countries could be basing their statistics off of. And I would say a good start for anyone who is uneducated in the cannabis market, whether it's government, whether it's the regular consumer in Thailand, a really good start would be the EU to take a look at it and how they're regulating and how they're doing things.
It seems like there is still very much like a big ocean opportunity out there for cannabis. Like, even though you were kind of a little bit against the Canadian market, but there's still money to be made there.
Oh, of course, yes. There's money to be made, but a lot of the money, unfortunately, went to the power corporations and the government, which you're going to, it's okay to be a power corporation. It's okay to be a big company that makes a lot of money, and it's okay that the government takes a chunk out of the profits and taxation. That's normal, I think. But when they eliminate all the mom and pop shops and all the craft growers and all the people that started the industry, that's where it becomes a problem. So when it came to Thailand, and I started speaking with Kitty, if and when these things do come into play, it would be wonderful to see the kids from the universities getting the opportunities to be the growers. It would be amazing that you're reaching out to the rice farmers that maybe not make a lot of money and give them the opportunities to grow the either industrial hemp or cannabis and make the money and become self-sustainable. So although there is a lot of money to be made in every market, cannabis is not a short-term play. So if anybody thinks cannabis is a short-term play, you're really misguided on the topic. Cannabis will be around and strong and very profitable for the next 20 to 25 years as long as you know how to pivot in the industry when the blocks come up. Canada will succeed. There is a lot of problems now, but it is our first year into legalization. I think it can only get better. Well, it can only get better, that's for sure. Yeah, and just as America can only get better, once they federally lift the ban, that will help the American industry very much so. And if Europe follows the play that Switzerland is doing, Europe will be an extremely, extremely successful cannabis market. And then hopefully it rolls into all these countries like Southeast Asia, Africa, which is already starting up itself. And it's amazing to see because, we talk about profits, which is great. I like money as the rest of anybody else, but I care about the patient the most. A friend of mine's company's got a grow down in Africa called Metagrow in Leslo. And not only are they paying the people that work for them triple the amount of money that they ever made, they get fresh food, they get fresh clothes every day, a hot shower, they've built homes for them, they've given them food every day, things that these people weren't getting on an average basis. To me, that is important. And I know that that's not the main topic when you're talking about legalization, and a lot of government, they want to hear about the money aspect, and that's fine. But sustainability and taking care of your people needs to be addressed, and it needs to be included with the profiting of your industry. So,
well, this international opportunity, Thailand, on the other hand, it's very different because currently, with the law itself, you can't really do much. And more than likely, the restriction will be for at least 5 years. So we are kind of hands tied in terms of if we're actually ever going to go into production, cultivation, or anything within that line as a private sector. But at the same time, it does not stop us from venturing into the leaching industry or the industry that are the infrastructure for cannabis industry, or to be able to expand your current market of whatever it is that you guys are doing into the cannabis industry. Do not think that the cannabis industry cannot be expanded into. There's so much problem within every single process, from cultivation all the way through to regulation. And with the problems, we have more opportunity to solve them, to find a solution. There is already a global market out there, and you don't even need to touch the plant. Such as, in terms of tech-wise, there were companies that's doing blockchain, that's tracking seed to sale. That is also working on counterfeit drugs to make sure that whatever it is that the patient gets is safe. All the way through to packaging, and also any grow tech, art tech. Art tech is actually going to be a really big part of cannabis, smart farming, IoTs, all the way through to even deep tech and data, because it's so finicky. One strand can, say, if you ever want to do anything with cannabis and you write a business plan and you decided, I just want to change the strand. By doing that, you're literally telling yourself that we're scrapping that and we're starting new. There's so much detail. Each strand is different in terms of what it can be used is different, how it's grown is different, the climate that it wants is different. Some likes you to talk to it, some don't, that type of thing. It's so finicky. So this is where tech and deep tech is really going to be where the solution you will get for cannabis.
Yeah, I was hearing like yesterday, like, oh, cannabis, it's such a strange topic to be at a tech and innovation summit. It's not. Cannabis, although it might be 2, 3 years, 5 years away in Thailand, it's already medicinalized in Korea, the Philippines,
Japan, you can actually get CBD.
Yeah, hemp CBD in Japan. So the fact is that the market's coming. So for a tech or an innovation company, you guys want to be about 2 years ahead of the industry. So for when it does come, whether it's creating, say, a seed to sale POS system that no one's ever created before, or smart growing technology that can allow hemp farmers to produce 20 times faster than any other regular farmer in the world. There's a lot that can be done inside the cannabis space already before it's legalized on the tech and innovation side, because to me, when it was Canada 9 to 10 years ago, they started talking about extraction and extraction machines and all the things that were going to be coming into play. And that I went from watching people make extraction of cannabis oils for sick people on griddles in their own home 10 years ago to having machines that are as big as the stage that can produce oil in different type of distillates in cannabis oils for sick patients at 15 to 20,000 bottles a day to help as many patients as possible. So it was the companies that took the risk before the industry involved that became the most benefited from it and most profitable in it.
And also, if you don't get in now, China's is already looking at it.
Yeah.
So that's the scary part.
Yeah, they're doing industrial hemp up to like 50,000 hectares at a time right now.
Well, to wrap all that up, it is something that you really need to look into. Opportunity is there. It's just how well you are educated within the topic and how much knowledge you have. So I would like to say thank you guys, and let's wrap this session up, our little wake and bake session. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.